On February 9th, 1964, the Beatles captured America with their electric appearance on the Ed Sullivan Show. Back next with a young lady from Toronto who a few months later was swept up in Beatlemania. That's in 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, as mentioned before on this podcast, I'm old enough to remember seeing the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. It happened 60 years ago on February 9th, 1964. I remember my dad going on and on about their long hair and those so-called Beatle wigs. But I couldn't take my eyes off them, and neither could a then record 73 million other people who watched them that night. A few months later, that summer of 1964, the Beatles came to Toronto for 2 performances at Maple Leaf Gardens. There for both shows, and chosen to interview them the next day for the Toronto Star, was one lucky teen, Michele Finney. At the time, she was the young co-star opposite Alan Hamel and Howard the Turtle of the daily live afternoon CBC kids show, Razzle Dazzle. 20 years ago, on the 40th anniversary of Beatlemania, I interviewed Michele back when I was the TV columnist for the Toronto Sun. She's just as fab now as she was then, as you'll hear in our conversation. Here she is, ma belle Michele Finney. I love your beautiful vaulted wooden ceiling in the background. That's very pretty.
Thank you very much. It's what do they call it? Not board and batten, post and beam.
Yeah, it's glorious. My goodness, it's really lovely.
Thank you. I'm out in the woods, eh?
Yeah, that's good. That's a good place to be. We're actually moving. That's why my bookcase is stripped in the background here, and I'm always embarrassed by that. What was the director John Waters once said? If you're going out on a date with someone and you go back to their place, they have no books, don't sleep with them. He didn't say sleep.
Yeah, I can imagine what he would have said.
Yeah, it's good advice, I think. Listen, I'm so happy to reconnect. You probably won't remember, you and I spoke 20 years ago, I think the 40th anniversary
Wow.
of the Beatles in Canada, and I was working at the Toronto Sun at the time.
And yeah, I do. I remember.
Yeah, I was delighted to contact you then. I absolutely watched Razzle Dazzle. So I'm looking forward to talk to you about all of those things. But thank you for making the time today. And yeah, I envy you moving further north. We're moving to Orangeville, so we're sort of slowly getting further north.
Well, you're about an hour south of me then.
Okay, well, there you go. Yeah. I'm. It's a beautiful country, and we have a cottage in Lake Huron, and so it'll get us closer to there, right?
Lake Huron is one of my most favorite places on the whole planet. I had a cabin north of Goderich for many, many years, and
Wow.
It's the closest thing to an ocean inland that you're going to come across, and the best sunsets in the world.
It is. Yes, we face west and watch the sunset over Lonely Island, and it's always been, for 66 years, a perk for me. So we've been very lucky. Yeah. Listen, one of the reasons I'm calling, of course, is your connection to the Beatles. So let's get right at that. Okay. This fascinates me because you were obviously well known to me and many Canadians as co-host of Razzle Dazzle, which was a CBC children's show, afternoon, daily, I think.
Yeah, every 5 days a week.
5 days a week, imagine. And yeah. Now, and you were on this as early as 1961. You must have not been a teenager yet. Must have been.
No, I started the show when I was 11 and turning 12.
Wow.
But that's when I started.
Is it true that you went for an audition for something else, for an adventure series, and that kind of led to Razzle Dazzle?
Yeah, that is true. They interviewed me for about 3 hours to be the girl buddy in an adventure series where there were two boys, a girl, and a dog, and they were going to climb mountains and save people and conquer the world. And I think sort of a Forest Rangers kind of format that what later became the Forest Rangers. But they interviewed me for like 3 hours. I was in the room, and then they asked my father and I to go out. And, I didn't know what was going to happen, and came back in, and they said, well, we don't want you for the series.
Okay.
And, okay. Thank you very much. But we would like you to go on a new venture, which is to host a daily television show.
That's all right.
That was all right. But a bit life-changing, world-changing, certainly for me at 11. I had no idea what I was walking into. And neither did they, because it had never been done before. Any programs using kids like Maggie Muggins, where they had, a child host on it, had all been taped.
Right.
So this is live, and certainly not 5 days a week live.
Wow,
So,
that's incredible. Live. I see my memory in that it would have been taped. That would have been my guess.
No, I think in the second season, we ended up taping like some holiday programs. But remember, this was 1961, and, we were still black and white with very large cameras.
I bet. Size of refrigerators.
That's right. On wheels.
Yeah. And I think on Razzle Dazzle, you actually showed the Forest Rangers, didn't you, at some point?
We did. I think the first couple of years we had an adventure series from Australia called "It'll Come to Me in a Minute." It was a wonderful series, but out of Australia. And then I think the last few years when they started producing Forest Rangers, we switched to Forest Rangers. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually went to a Forest Rangers reunion 10 years ago. It was the 50th.
Oh, with Rex and
in Kleinburg, at this old K Ranch. And it was fascinating because all those kids that were the Forest Rangers, most of them live in England now, and they were now in their late 60s at this reunion.
I think Rex is still here. I think Stan Endersby is still here. Ralph Endersby, I think, moved overseas.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know about the others. No.
Well, it was 10 years ago, and Gordon Pinsent was there. He was there. He played a Mountie on the series.
Yeah. Yes.
And a real Mountie showed up to the reunion in full regalia, just, the dress tunic, and told Pinsent that he was the inspiration for him becoming a Mountie from that series.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? Oh, what a great story. That's grand.
It was pretty cool. But anyway, you were doing this series, and I'm fascinated, Michele, by this time, because a lot of these children's shows I grew up with, they don't exist. Either they were live, as Razzle Dazzle was, or they were the tape was worth more than the show, they thought back then, and a lot of it was just taped over and lost. Do episodes of Razzle Dazzle exist?
Fortunately, they do. Yeah, we are in the archive. So that I think actually, that they did have some early ones as well that I have seen. We did a reunion in the summer with Al Hamel and Nina Keogh, who's the daughter of Howard the Turtle, John Keogh.
Wow!
And they have some old footage there that was. But yeah, I think they can have a little bit from a variety of years and some of the more holiday special shows that we did. So we're not completely lost.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Yes, it is.
Where was that reunion?
We did it a Zoom call.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Yeah. I wondered because there was a museum showing in Ottawa for a year of children's shows, history of Canadian children's television. And then there's a little museum in Toronto that also did one over last summer. And neither one had Howard. And I thought, where is Howard the Turtle? Can you solve the mystery of Howard the Turtle?
Well, I'm surprised about that because I know Nina Keogh. I'm reasonably certain she was involved with the one that happened in Toronto this past summer. And I would have thought she would have been consulted on the other one because she was the head puppeteer on so many shows, Canadian shows.
Yeah.
But Howie is with Nina, as far as I know. There were a couple of Howies, but there is one that certainly is with his daughter, I guess.
Yeah. I love that you refer to him as Howie. He was very real to you as a youngster, I guess, on the show.
Oh, he's very real to me now. I mean, once John got in the box and the hand went into the Howard head and came up through the shell, there was no John. There was only Howie. And everyone on the set referred to him as Howie. No one ever said, John, move your head to the left or right. It was always Howard, move, Howard, pick this up, Howard. No, he was completely alive and real and had his own persona.
I see. I'd love to see the Howard the Turtle outtakes. I bet you there'd be some fun stuff.
Well, we had John, we had Al, known for his humor. We had several other people on the show that were very, very funny. A lot of the Ryerson TV students used to like to come down and watch our rehearsals. I mean, for the obvious technical reasons, but it was just a hilarious set to be on. I mean, the things that didn't make it to air.
Must have been great.
Early education. That's just.
Was it taped on Mutual Street or Jarvis? Where were you?
We were on Jarvis.
Okay. This is before the CBC Broadcast Center. CBC had studios all over, scattered about 30 different places, I think, back then. And that's extraordinary. So you were doing that live. Did it air at 4 o'clock? What time was that show on?
Yeah, I think it was 4:30, something like that time, so that kids had a chance to get home from school. Probably 4:30. I have a feeling.
How about you? How did you get home from, like, how did you make this? You were homeschooled, or how did you manage to do this?
Well, it was a bit of a busy schedule. In the first few years, I went to school in the morning and then came home, had lunch. My mom brought me down to the studio, did the show, got home, had 3 hours of tutoring, did my homework for school, did my homework for my tutors, and learned a half an hour script for the next day.
Wow. And I understand you had a pretty good memory for memorizing your lines, right?
Yes, at that time I had a photographic memory, which really came to my aid because there was so much that had to be, let's just say some members of the cast had their script pasted on everywhere they could. Right.
Alan Hamel. Excuse me. Sorry.
Hamel did that. But I committed. But, also there were blank moments when we'd, turn to Howard and say, "So, Howard, what do you think?" Which was kind of our cue as I have no idea what I'm supposed to say in this moment. Help.
Where are we? That's funny because he had the script.
He was in the box with the script. Yeah.
They should have put Alan in a box. Did you have a chance to offer condolences to Alan?
Yes, I did. It was a very shocking and tragic loss, and no greater love. And he has a most amazing family. He and Suzanne, blended their family and have gone on to have beautiful grandchildren and an empire. That he's fully loved and supported, and I'm so thrilled for that. She was a wonderful warrior woman, I think. She championed a lot of causes and was pretty fearless and had her own personal battles with health and overcame many of them, lived many, many more years than she was supposed to have, or they told her she would. And but still, it was a tragic loss. Yeah,
I had the good fortune to meet them. Suzanne Summers was in Toronto. They were mounting a one-woman show at the Royal Alex at this particular time. I think I was at the Sun. Again, it might have been about 20 years ago. And anyway, I was told to go and meet them down at this green room, I guess, at the Royal Alex. And I walk in the door, and I walk right past Suzanne. Alan Hamel, Razzle Dazzle, which they both got a kick out of. But it was they could not have been more gracious and kind at the time. I remember having a good chat with them. Yeah, she used to quip about that, how, Alan was asked about Howard and myself all the time, and she'd go like, "Yeah, I know, Razzle Dazzle." Michele, do you have memories of what else was on in terms of children's programming there? I have a particular interest in this. There's a gentleman I've interviewed, Trevor Evans, and he was Kiddo the Clown. Do you know what I'm talking about with this show? Did you ever meet him? It was on CFTO. It was an early effort out of Bayton, I guess, at the time.
No.
Okay. Well, he would dress up as a typical circus clown. He had like an Emmett Kelly. He had the slap shoe, clown makeup, and it ran 3 years. But again, in talking to him, all of it is gone. There's not a second of it that exists. Oh, that's a shame. Yeah. No, I mean, I remember. I mean, there was Mr. Dress Up. There was Mr. Rogers. There was Friendly. Yeah. Friendly Giant was on. I think Maggie Muggins was still on.
That's all that I can remember on CBC. And then I think we had our competitor's show, Randy Dandy.
Oh, yeah. With the Randy Moskowitz, the creator of the hilarious House of Frightenstein.
That's right. That's right.
Was the Friendly Giant taped or shot at the same studio where you were doing Razzle Dazzle?
Across the hall for me, but they were taped.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because they had quite a production, with lots of little things that needed to be moved around, and yeah, they were all taped as far as I know.
From what I understand, they used to play on recorder and harp the theme live every show. Did you happen to hear that? Or you have any memories of that? Or
well, I don't think I was ever in a taping, but I do know that that did happen. Yes.
Incredible. Yeah, amazing. Well, it was a lovely show. And how many seasons were you on? 4 seasons?
4 seasons, yes. And then I think I guested on the 5th season, but by that time in 4 and 5, I was also doing Time of Your Life with Peter Kastner.
Right.
Which a teenage variety show, an hour show once a week. So there were lots of rehearsals and dancing and music and singing lessons and all sorts of things that was added on. So for my grade 10 year, I was actually homeschooled. There weren't enough hours in the day to get me everywhere I needed to be. So
I guess not. Don't go away. We'll be right back with Michele Finney after these brief messages.
Round here it's called a varsity blues. Went to a pub, went to a party with a little bit of work you might get a B. Your books are overdue, the school is gonna sue, and your doc's gonna give you the third degree. You get that aching feeling when the essays due. Round here it's called a varsity blues.
The second season of the compelling crime thriller Hidden Assets returns to Super Channel for its exclusive Canadian premiere on Sunday, February 11th at 9 p.m., with each episode also available on Super Channel On Demand. This Irish-Belgian-Canadian co-production is a must-watch for aficionados of crime thrillers. In Season 2 of this Super Channel original, Criminal Asset Bureau's new team lead Claire Wallace finds herself at odds with CTU's Christian de Jong over the Antwerp investigation. And speaking of hidden assets, Quebecer and Brio TV favorite Karine Vaness is among the Canadians on Season 2 of this drama. And remember, Super Channel, an all-Canadian service, is available via most cable providers across the country, as well as streaming live and on demand with Amazon Prime Video channels, Apple TV Plus, and the Roku platform in Canada. Well, did you know that it was June Carter Cash who wrote one of Johnny Cash's biggest hits, Ring of Fire? That's just one of the things you'll learn watching June, streaming this month on Paramount Plus. June shines a spotlight on the history of country music and the Carter and Cash families. The 5-time Grammy Award-winning singer, actor, and author has opened for Elvis, appeared on screen with Robert Duvall and Jane Seymour, and as mentioned, was a damn fine songwriter. Featuring interviews with the woman herself, the film also includes sit-downs with her family, admirers, and friends, including Dolly Parton, Reese Witherspoon, and Willie Nelson. And remember, there's a mountain of premium entertainment for audiences of all ages on Paramount Plus. Here she is again, Michele Finney. How did it come that you were chosen as sort of like an ambassador when the Beatles performed in Toronto? Were you? Just take me through the process of your being part of their coming to Toronto.
Well, I was a child personality at the time, and possibly the only one that was close to a teenager. And Gordon Sinclair called and just said, I'd met him before and knew him over the years, and just said, hey, we're going to these shows. I want you to come and interview them. Well, let me think about that for a minute, Gordon.
Now, Let me get this straight. Gordon Sinclair, not on Front Page Challenge. This is another gentleman, or
no.
Is it? So what was his connection to the Beatles?
Nothing other than through the paper.
Okay. All right. So you get a call from Gordon Sinclair. Wow.
Yeah.
And so he said, we need you to talk to John, Paul, George, and Ringo. Can you think you
Yes.
can work this in your schedule? And you said,
And
yes.
yes. And do you think you could attend both of the shows? And would you be able to pop by the King Edward the next day and see them, you know?
Yeah. Wow.
What?
Yes,
and I will.
How old would you have been at this point?
When was that show? Was it in the late summer?
1964, summer of 64, like August, I think. Yeah.
So I was 14.
My goodness. Prime time.
14.
Right dead center in the heart of Beatlemania. And you were at Maple Leaf Gardens. So from the legend is that Harold Ballard tricked them into doing a second show, that he turned the heat up to 80 degrees to sell more Coca-Cola. Do you have memories of it being particularly hot in there, or are these kind of just legends?
It was very, very hot in there. Now, I didn't know that they turned the heat up. I just, thought it was because there were so many people exuding so much energy and jumping up and down and, excitement. Yeah. But it was roasting in there. I do remember that. Okay. But
there we have it confirmed.
I can confirm that one. The Coke part, maybe, but I'm not a pop drinker, so I didn't get any pop. No.
Okay. And I think Bob McAdory was a disc jockey at Chum at the time before he went to Global. I think he was the one on stage who said, "Here they are, the Beatles," right?
I believe so. Yes. Yeah.
Good guy, Bob. I
very good guy.
Yeah, used to see him at Global when I worked at TV Guide on Fridays.
Right.
And you had an occasion to meet him then or other times?
I couldn't tell you where or when, but I listened to him on the radio, and we're all crossing paths all the time. Doing things at the CNE bandstand shows and stuff. Everybody was just. There were enough of us, but it was a pretty small crowd, really.
So you would have been pulled onto floats at the Santa Claus parade, or this kind of...
I did a lot for the United Appeal, and I worked with them going across the country and attending festivals and children's events and hospitals and that sort of thing. So that was the United Way, Children's Appeal. That was all very much what I did on the weekends.
Wow. Good Lord. Good for you.
Yeah.
So you're in Maple Leaf Gardens. The Beatles are performing 2 shows. You saw them both. Where were you sitting? Where were you sitting?
I was on the floor. And I had a great seat until everybody stood up.
Was the screaming deafening? Could you hear the Beatles?
No, not really. No, there was it was just a din of screaming girls, and you would catch moments, but we didn't have the sound systems then that we have now, of course. And, I think there would have been Elvis and Sinatra and I guess a few other people like that would have, provoked some screaming. But this was certainly unique for me. Yeah. And I think I'd been to one other concert before in my life, and that was to see Judy Garland at the O'Keefe Center.
Wow.
So, I'd been to Massey Hall, but nothing where anyone was screaming.
Pretty cool, though, seeing Judy Garland at the O'Keefe.
It was that I remember it vividly, and it was just jaw-dropping. She was just exquisite.
Wow. Was she on with? Was there an opening act?
It was a one-woman show.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Wow. So you're at the Beatles. Were you getting pelted by jelly babies? By jelly beans?
I don't remember that. No, that doesn't ring a bell. It might have been going on in another area, but fortunately, I missed that.
Good. So the next day, you interview them at the King Edward. Is that what happened?
Yes. Well, I met them at the press conference,
okay.
And actually, I know our listeners can't see it, but this is the original article that I wrote for the Star, which is kind of I think it's a really cute story. They assigned me a writer to take me back to the Star offices after the concert had happened. So, we're now talking, I don't know, 9, 10, 11, something like that.
Wow.
And I didn't know how to type. So I wrote everything out in longhand, and the reporter typed it all in and corrected my grammar and spelling and and created the article that they ran in the Star the next day.
That's
where
great.
I called them a magic pill. I thought it was, I read it earlier today, and I talk about their vibration. I was really ahead of my time.
No kidding.
Yeah. And that I thought they were so very well, the teenagers in Toronto were very well behaved compared to other cities where they'd, stormed the stage and thrown chairs and done things like that. Our in true Canadian fashion, we were,
of course,
we were happy but polite.
Peace, order, and good government. That's Canada.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. That's pretty exciting. So you got to be in the Star the next day, and that photo, when you and I talked the last time, I think you told me that photo of you, there it is, that you had in your house still on the wall, right?
Yes, I do. I have a larger version of this. I mean, this is a bit of a treasure for me.
No kidding. You look radiant in that shot. It's a glorious picture.
I'm standing in between Paul and George. And John.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a glow that didn't wear off for a good week or so. I mean, I got through. I have to pat myself in the back. I got through it professionally. The next day, we went to the hotel where I met them, and there were a lot of people hanging around. So it's not like I was there at their hotel room with them. There was me and 40 other people coming and going. But I did meet them then, but I got through everything, like the child star that I was,
Yeah, good for
and
you.
the good Canadian girl that I was.
Yeah.
And I think when it was all over and done, then I was just like, I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak. I was just overcome, and my girlfriends were all calling me or coming over, and we just sit on the bed and like giggle and scream and look at all our Beatle posters, and I had my own little Beatlemania going on.
When we read about those occasions, which incredibly 60 years ago, often John is described as the cynical one or the edgy one. But lately I've read stories where he was actually quite kind in those occasions to people one-on-one that he would meet. Did you get a sense of him at all from that occasion?
Well, I did go on to meet him again later on in life when he was married to Yoko. I'd say that there was, I think he was a genius, and I think there were two sides to the coin.
Yeah.
With many of us, and I don't think he was a mean person or a bad person or I wasn't a personal friend of his, so I'm
right.
This is conjecture, but, I only found him to be, one of the brief times that I spoke with him, very kind, very dry sense of humor. And I don't think he had any problem telling you his mind, or what he thought of you, or he would just walk away. I saw him do that a couple of times. He was just, if the question was too stupid in his mind, he would just walk away.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a favorite Beatle?
Paul.
Of course, yeah. So now Paul wrote this song called Michelle. I don't know if there's a connection.
I don't know, but we have a dear friend who has a large pyrotechnic industry company. He does Kiss and Celine and the Super Bowl and does all of McCartney's work. And I asked him, I said, what's he like to work with? And he said he's one of the finest, most decent human beings he's ever met on the planet, treats his staff and crew very, very well. And he said the only problem with working on a McCartney tour is that, of course, he's vegetarian, has been for, decades, thanks to Linda, is that all of the catering, all the buffets, all the food that comes in for the crew is all vegetarian. And he said, so there's a lot of beans, and he said, take it from there.
Wow. Well, there you go. That opens.
I was happy to hear that, and Doug Adams has worked with many, many folks, and he just gave them all thumbs up. That and Shania Twain, the same.
Oh, lovely. Wow.
Just glorious people to work for and
That's
work with.
To hear, yeah. and George and Ringo. Was Brian Epstein around? Did you meet him, the manager?
No, he might have been around, but I was too focused, excuse me, on four mop heads. I wasn't really paying attention to anyone else that was there.
Now you mentioned that after his talk to your girlfriends and stuff. I mean, did kids at school, did they hate you? Did they did they find this fantastic? What was the reaction?
Well, I think the kids that hated me already hated me. That was just sort of the cherry on the cake if you really wanted to dislike Michele Finney. Yeah. But for the most part, I had a small group of friends that I'd come up through, grades 6, 7, and 8, and into high school with. And most of my friends were older, and many of my friends were like people that worked on the show. I think for the most part, I had a very loyal and large fan club, and everyone was thrilled and delighted. And so we had the photo that I showed you, this one, which has been around. Yeah, we had that printed up, and I autographed and sent one to all the, I don't know how many thousands of kids were in the fan club at that point, but I sent that out just so that they could have a little part of the history of being there.
Fantastic. You actually sent me one at the Sun. Everything's packed. I've got it though. I still have it. It's pretty cool.
Well, it's priceless now, Bill.
Yeah, I bet it is.
And I have the program, and somewhere I'm getting a little worried about this because I'm 74, but I have the ticket stubs.
Oh my goodness.
From the show, and now the only thing is I don't remember where I put them. So I have to go on a bit of a search for that. I have that and some Razzle memorabilia. I have a pen and a Howard pen and a secret decoder and a few things like that I've kept. But I'm going to have to find a place to send them because clock's ticking, so they have to go somewhere.
Well, I think that's fantastic that you have that, and that I think kids could write in and get the secret decoder ring from Razzle Dazzle, right? That's
right. They had to join the club and write in, and then you were sent, back in the days where people mailed you stuff that didn't come through Amazon, you got, and we had just bags and bags of mail. And I remember my dad going down to the offices on wherever that would have been, the CBC headquarters, which wasn't on Jarvis Street, somewhere else. It was their business offices. Okay. Carlton, somewhere like that.
Yeah, Carlton. Yeah, and behind Maple Leaf Gardens there. Yeah.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and going in, and there were like bags and bags of mail in the corner. And he said, "What's that?" He said, "Well, that's all mail to Michele." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do with it?" He said, "Well, we don't know. It's just piling up." So then it started coming to my house, and all the letters were answered, and to the best that we could. And I've, for many years, had women come up to me, and men too, and say, I wrote to you when I was 10 years old and 11 years old, and you wrote me back. And in those days, kids didn't really have many places to turn if they needed to have some listen. And
that was a great service you did, because my goodness, you hear people.
My pleasure, my joy.
Yeah, no, it means a lot to get that connection. People.
Yeah, and there were some kids that were in some really tough stories, and we were able to, get a bit of help for them, get a bit of direction, because there was nothing. There was nothing. You didn't have a guide. You're not going to talk to your teacher or your guidance counselor. So, yeah, it was, just an amazing experience. I mean, it came with a lot of work. It came with some trying times. I loved the show. I didn't like the business of the business too much, but just an amazing, incredible experience. I worked with fabulous people. I got to have so much fun, and I got to interact with, hundreds of people, and have this. And it's really, honestly, without getting too schmoozy about it, but it touches my heart so much when someone will come up and say, I remember. Do you remember the show when Percy Kid Pastor was like, oh, God, I don't, but I'm sure he did.
But you're right, Michele. Back then, to be on TV even once was like landing on the moon for most people. It was an amazing experience. TV was new. And, my mom was a contestant on the Canadian version of To Tell the Truth. And so this was when CFTO was first starting in Agincourt, and I remember as a little kid going with her. But that was like, something you'd see on I Love Lucy, somebody getting on television, right?
Really, yeah. And, and we had a live audience every day from, we had a different class from a local school. I think we went as far as maybe Whitby, or I don't know how far out we went with the classrooms, but yeah, we had kids there every day with their shakers and the Razzle Dazzle bleachers, and
fantastic.
And a lot of those people have come saying, I was in the bleachers. I had one of those shakers,
Wow. More Razzle Dazzle magic with Michele Finney in just a moment. Well, time once again to check in with our friend Emily Gagne at Hollywood Suite. Emily, Happy New Year. What do you got for us now?
Well, Bill, we're blasting off into 2024 with genre fare. We're talking sci-fi, we're talking horror, we're talking the freakiest and the most fun movies you can think of. Everything from Beetlejuice to Blade, we've got on our channels this month.
Wow, Blade scares me. What's the freakiest sci-fi film you've got, though?
Sci-fi, I mean, we've got 2001: A Space Odyssey. I don't know if that's the freakiest, but it's a classic. We've got Close Encounters of the Third Kind. But I really think if you want something weird and wonderful, we have this film called 976 Evil, which is directed by Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund.
Well, that's the number, 976 Evil. You can find it on Hollywood Suite. Emily, thanks for the tip.
Thanks, Bill.
And now, more with Michele. Your parents were involved in performing in show business. They were from England, and is that where they got their start?
Yeah, my mother was a vaudevillian performer, so she sang, she danced, she tap danced, she played accordion, she played piano, wow. And my father was a theatrical manager. He worked for Lou Grade.
Sir Lou Grade, yes. Sir
Lou Grade, yes. So my dad was a manager, and he managed actually my mother's show that she was in, and that's how they met. And they, after the war, and during the war, they traveled all through England performing for the troops, and I think were bombed out of their own places at least 2 or 3 times during the course of the war. Fortunately, they survived. After the war, they decided they wanted to go to California. And so they got on the Queen Elizabeth wow. and came across and landed in New York City, only to find that the quota had been filled for British immigrants at the time. And they were given a choice. Either they could go back to England or they could go to Toronto, Canada. So they felt, well, Toronto's closer than Britain. So they came up Toronto and became pregnant with me and ended up staying until 1965. And then my parents, all of us actually moved to California. I didn't stay there. I came back to Canada, but my parents lived out their lives in California.
Isn't that amazing, Michele? Just because of some quota, you had this opportunity in Toronto, that your life started there, and you had this wonderful television experience. Amazing.
I know. It's just my husband and I play this game called Connect the Dots. When things seem like a random occurrence, it's later on you look back and say, well, if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't have been there. I wouldn't have met that. There are no random events. That's how it was meant to be. I did go to California in 1965, and I hit Hollywood in the era of sort of Gidget and the Flying Nun. Right. Well, I was about 2 feet taller than everyone else and had dark hair, not blonde hair, and a slight British accent. I was much younger than these other teenage performers at the time, because they had very strict, the Jackie Coogan child
right. Yes.
performance laws, right?
Yeah.
So you had to have a tutor, a social worker, and a guardian with you at all times on the set. Very expensive. So what they were doing was casting 18-year-olds as 14 and 15-year-olds.
Oh, even older. I mean, Patty Duke.
And older.
And
yeah, absolutely.
Sally Field, they were older than they the characters that they played at the time.
Much older. And I mean, they did cast certainly some, if a kid had to be 10 or something, they were going to cast kids that age. But so I didn't fit in there at all. And I missed the museums and I missed the theater. And all the kids seemed to do was like go to the beach and take acid.
Well, yeah. You didn't find
not me. So I eventually came back to Toronto and continued on for a few years, and then left the business for a while. Then went back and did a lot of commercial work in that would have been the 80s, I guess, back in the high times of doing national commercials, which was great fun. And then left the business again.
You did series as well, though. I know that reading your IMDb, you were on Wojak. You were on a show called Police Surgeon, which was early 70s police medical show. John Candy's first TV appearance was on Police Surgeon. Do you have any memories of shooting that?
None whatsoever.
Well, you were on The Littlest Hobo. Must remember.
I did a couple of hobos, and they were always something because Hobo had his manager, his trainer, and he was a real character. And you really had to toe the line around Hobo.
Oh my God!
Yeah, no, they were fun to shoot though because you were always on location with Littlest Hobo, and I did two, maybe three, but I know I did a couple of them.
Don't they say never work with dogs and turtles? I think
kids, dogs, and turtles. Yes, you will be upstaged every time.
And other work. So when did you do anything in LA before you came back? Was there a commercial?
No,
work?
I didn't stay there very long. I really didn't enjoy it at all. I was very homesick for just my friends, and it was such a different world. It was like, I don't know. Yeah. I wasn't a Beach Boy girl.
Right.
So I needed to get back to where there was theater and art, and I mean, all of that was going on, but I wasn't a part of it. And I just miss being home. Really, I miss being home. Now later on, I swore I would never go back. I would visit my parents, of course, frequently and over the years. But my husband actually and I lived there for 8 years. We've been back almost 8 years, but we spent 8 years on the central coast of California, the Big Sur area. My husband's a Californian, and he actually was one of the co-founders of the group Iron Butterfly. I don't know if you... Yes,
Danny Weiss, for sure.
Danny Weiss, went on.
I beg your pardon.
That's quite okay.
Yeah, now it's kind of amazing that you end up marrying a rock star.
Yeah.
I mean, the two of you must get a chuckle out of your stories, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, we have, between the two of us, we have a lot of stories. He has some amazing stories because he really was, a rock and roll guitar player in the 60s on the Sunset Strip. So his stories can trump mine a little bit sometimes, but that's all right. That's okay.
Wow. Pretty exciting life, Michele, right?
Thank you. It's been a good life, and like everyone's life, there've been better times and times that were challenging, but I think that's why we're here, is to get through all of that. And you never learn less. You always learn more, no matter what happens. And I think it's an opportunity for us to take everything and try and make it meaningful.
The one thing you mentioned about you were disenchanted about the business of television. What in particular? What was that? What did you mean by that when you were 15 or so, and you just thought, well, I've been on this show for 4 years, but that part wasn't your favorite?
Well, I had a lot of people to please. As a kid, I had to please the school board. I had to please the head of the children's department. I had tutors. I had teachers at school. Excuse me. There were just a lot of loops and hoops that had to be almost perfect in order for me to be allowed to do what I wanted to do, because I had to be given permission from the Board of Education. They gave me a work permit.
Wow.
So I had to have the grades that said, no, she's doing all right. Yeah. And at times it was just, and I was, going through puberty at the same time. So it was, a lot emotionally, but I always loved doing the doing the show, going out, meeting the people, all of that was great. It was, and I think many performers will say the same thing. They don't like the business of the business, but the art of it, they love doing.
I bet. Yeah. And the other thing I wanted to ask was, that second time you met John Lennon, was that when he was here doing the live piece in Toronto show with,
yes.
But did you get to go to that show?
Yes, I was at that show. Yeah.
Now
yeah.
that's, I mean, just to be there for that, I mean, that was a rock and roll extravaganza with all the early rockers, right? Chuck Berry.
It really was. I mean, when you look at those old playbills of who performed at those festivals, I mean, staggering, all the top talent of the year, was on that circuit. And I mean, Clapton was in that band and it was an incredible show. Yeah.
Jerry Lee Lewis and Klaus Wuman, their bass player, for Beatle fans. It was incredible, really,
really. It it was a total surprise. It was a unique thing that happened. And it was a very magical moment if you happened to be there. I mean, I won't say melodic.
No.
But, still there were some great performances. The other bands were sensational. There were moments in the Plastic Ono band that were a little grating.
Well, Yoko singing in a bag, I guess, would have been.
I was trying not to say that, Bill. So thanks for saying it for me.
Listen, it's all documented. There's,
yeah, it is.
But I think the Doors played there. I think it was Alice Cooper. I think was part of that show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Doors were at Strawberry Fields too. So we had a number of festivals happen during that time frame. 68, 69. Some really major shows were produced up here.
Yeah.
Post Woodstock.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, listen, Michele, thank you very much for sharing all these memories. I'm going to ask you 3 questions now. I always, for these podcasts, wrap up with. What are you watching now on TV? What grabs your attention? Is there something that you stream or watch on broadcast?
Oh, well, I'm watching True Detective right now.
Oh, wow.
With Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just started that. And I like a lot of documentaries. I watch a lot of things about ancient history. I'm a bit of an archaeology
Good for you.
fan. Yeah, so that's what I...
Any particular period?
Egypt.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah.
I've been to the pyramids. I've been to Egypt and I've been to the Great Pyramids of Cheops. And so I have I've always had a fond interest for them since I was a child. I think if I had done anything else, I would have tried to have been an archaeologist.
Wow. No, I've always been fascinated too. The Great Pyramid of Giza and all the, to be in.
Yeah, I was in the Pyramid of Cheops and, just amazing to stand with the stone sarcophagus inside that room with the slabs of stone. I mean, it was just like it competed with my Beatles experience.
I bet it did. Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. My son-in-law is Egyptian, so I'm hoping at some point to get to see Cairo or get to see the pyramids. Which, from what I understand, they're not way out in the desert. You're actually
no, they're not. There's there's a main hotel. I can't remember the name of it, and then there's a highway, and then there's a pyramid.
It's like they're in Mississauga or something.
But the reason I was there was I hosted one of the not United Appeal, the United. We went over. We were doing shows for the troops overseas.
Oh, my goodness. USO or all in Canada?
Kind of. So it has another name. I can't believe I forgot it, but I am 74. And we played for the base there. And one night there was the whole troupe of ours, musicians, dancers, singers, and they put us on camels and rode us across the desert out to this huge, enormous tent that was all lit up out in the middle of the desert. It was a nightclub.
Wow.
And, fantastic. And we're all singing, Midnight at the Oasis.
I was going through my head. Set your camel. Yeah, really. And so we get in there and we're all sitting down and I mean, literally these huge
bodyguards come in with sabers, and they're all, in traditional dress, and come in, and a sheikh comes in, and his kaftan, I'm not sure of the correct word, forgive me for that, knowing that, but diamonds, buttons from the throat all the way down to the ground and all the way down the sleeves, with this huge bodyguards and a few very veiled women. And it was marvelous.
Wow.
It was wonderful.
That's fantastic. That really is amazing. And Michele, when you were a youngster, and you acted even before Razzle Dazzle, right? I noticed credits. There was a couple of shows, very early CBC shows, sci-fi even. Do you have any memory of doing those shows?
Well, I think I started when I was about 7 or 8 I'd been modeling for a number of years, and then I was doing live children's radio programs, which was amazing experience too. I'd have to stand in a milk box to get up to the microphone to do it. And then I was doing a lot of drama, a lot of television drama, working with some of the great Leslie Nielsen and, the early Canadian performers on Star Time Presents. And we're going way back now. So that would have been the 50s, late 50s. So I was doing all of that before Razzle happened, and doing some theater work as well, never thinking that I would end up talking to a turtle for 4 years and loving it.
And we just lost Norman Jewison, but he was very much part of that, one of the leading lights. Did you get to meet him or be directed?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think he directed. I did a drama with Leslie Nielsen. It was The Crucible.
Wow.
And I think I think Norman produced that. If not that, it was another one that I did. But yeah, I mean, I was 8 or 9 years old.
Oh my goodness! You could have been working with Christopher Plummer or William Shatner. You wouldn't even know.
Yes. No, wouldn't have known. They certainly didn't know what was ahead of them.
That's true. Now, when you were younger, before Razzle Dazzle, did you have a favorite kids show? Was there something on TV that you just loved?
Yes, I loved. Was it the Sky Ranger?
I think I know
Disney show. Yeah, it was Sky King.
Sky King.
I love Sky King. Yes, and then there was it was Spin and Marty, probably, kids and dogs saving the world, that sort of thing. And I remember, and I remember that my parents always watched the 20th Century on Sunday.
Yeah.
And
with Walter Cronkite?
Yes.
Yeah. They would forecast what would be happening. And then he did the 21st century and let's travel to the world of 2001. And then
yes, I remember when my mother wasn't a terrific cook because she'd been a performer and, really wasn't around to cook, but she made one heck of a good English roast beef and Yorkshire pudding.
Wow.
And I remember having that on Sunday and on Walter Cronkite's show, they were showing open heart surgery. So I remember that along with the roast beef. It was not a particularly good mix.
That is hilarious. Okay. Finally, Michele, do you have an all-time favorite TV theme song?
Oh, gosh. Sopranos.
Hey, that's pretty good. It's pretty good, isn't it? I watched an episode last night of The Sopranos. It came on, and it's one of those shows that you'll flip and you'll see it for a minute, and then you're an hour later, you're still watching it. You just can't not watch that show, right?
No, you can't. You really can't. Wonderful. And I think, and Ozark, I felt the same way about Ozark. I thought Ozark was a brilliant series.
Pretty good. That's for sure. Those three guys that do that podcast, Smartless, the Ozarks, are one of them there. He's pretty amazing on that. Michele, thank you very much for your time today and thinking back on these extraordinary adventures of yours and the ones that you're continuing now. Congratulations on everything, and enjoy your beautiful viewpoint from the north there, and everything else. All good wishes for you.
Well, thank you, Bill. Thanks for thinking of me and remembering me in relationship to that very special time. And it's been a pleasure, and it's always a delight to have a chance to, share some old memories and have a laugh. And listen, maybe we'll have to meet up in Orangeville.
That would be fantastic. Please. Well, I've got the connections now. So, yeah, if you will, or we'll meet in Shelburne.
Sure.
Not much to meet in Shelburne, but anyway, we'll
Not
figure
too
it
much.
out.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, Bill. Thank you again.
All right. Take care. Thanks a lot, Michele. My thanks as always to producer Phil Hong for another Fab Gear podcast. Thanks to Michele's friends Howard the Turtle and Alan Hamel for all the great fun on Razzle Dazzle all those years ago. I'm grateful as well to the house band heard here on Brio TV on the podcast every episode, The Crispy Critters, led by BJ Del Conte and Paul Boudra, along with my old high school chum Steve Dudley. Finally, thanks to you, listener. If you enjoyed this conversation, let us know with a like or a comment at Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to podcasts or the Beatles. I'm Bill Brio. Thanks for listening.